My name is Blake Hutchison. I'm the International Counselor on the International Council, Wisconsin 97. So I wanted to welcome everyone today to our second Acacia Talk session, hopefully the second of many more to come. I just want to touch briefly on the point of these sessions. The purpose of an Acacia Talk session is kind of like a TED Talk. It's to share ideas, it's spark curiosity, inspire action, foster learning. Uh, these presentations are designed to educate, motivate our brotherhood by showcasing the innovative thoughts, some timeless truths, and personal passions and stories of our brotherhood. Acacia Talks can cover a wide range of topics, everything from career and personal development to hobbies and passions of our members. The idea is for Acacia is to share their life's experiences as thought leaders who are passionate about their subjects. Ultimately, the goal is to create a library of topics and presentations for spreading knowledge and ideas that can lead to positive change for all occasions. We're always on the lookout for brothers who are willing to share their knowledge and experiences with the brotherhood. If you have a hobby, a passion, a career insight that could benefit our undergraduates or alumni, we'd love to have you volunteer for your own Acacia Talk session. It's a fantastic opportunity to inspire and educate others while contributing to the growth and development of the fraternity. If you have an interest, please feel free to reach out to myself, Blake Hutchison. My contact information is on the website, or Benjamin Turconi, Executive Director of Communications for the fraternity. His contact information is also on the acacia.org website. Once confirmed on a date and time, work on preparing a presentation. We'll help you schedule it and promote it so that we'll get maximum attendance and engagement. And look forward to hearing from you and all the unique perspectives you have to offer. So thanks for joining tonight and for future volunteering. Tonight, we're thrilled to talk a little bit about the principles from Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. The session was originally going to be a conclave session, but due to a fantastic undergraduate recruitment panel, we pushed it off to an Acacia Talk session. So we hope it'll be insightful and transformative, whether you're looking to boost your professional development, build some stronger relationships with friends and brothers, or enhance your chapter's recruitment strategies. Hopefully, you'll learn some tools to communicate effectively, how to make a positive first impression and build lasting connections that will serve you throughout your life and career. Discover maybe some practical skills in connecting with others genuinely, cultivating trust, a huge aspect of everyday life, and maybe apply some of these principles to recruitment by creating an inviting, friendly atmosphere that will attract new members. So about tonight, our presenters. First, I'm going to introduce Michael Bender. He's a brother from the Missouri chapter, initiated in 2015. He's a project manager and researcher with deep expertise in data analytics and machine learning and deep brain stimulation research, which is all way over my head. He's currently pursuing a PhD at the University of Florida and has been recognized as one of the top 5 PhD students in the College of Engineering with the Dean's Research Award. Before going into research, he led a 500 million in pipeline projects across the U.S., and he holds a project management professional certification. His leadership skills were forged during his undergraduate years, where he served as junior dean and venerable dean of the Missouri chapter. Continuing his commitment to Acacia, he became the president of the Missouri Alumni Association. Michael believes that the keys to winning friends lies in asking why and genuinely relating to others. Next, we have Brother Joel Brown, also from Missouri, initiated in 2004. With a flourishing career in account management, Joel has mastered the art of building strong business relationships. As a past Missouri IFC President of the Year and active alumni leader, he understands the importance of listening and creating collaborative cultures. Joel spends his workdays connecting the best transit carriers with his preferred customers, ensuring that products reach their stores efficiently. Together with his wife, who you may have seen was a volunteer at our recent conclave, they own a fraternity consulting business called Ornitorinco. I hope I said that right, Joel. Aiming to combat the boy crisis as thought leaders for the social excellence movement. As an alumni, Joe has served the Missouri chapters in various roles, including house dad, recruitment advisor, chapter advisor, and also contributed to the International Fraternity as an Acacia Leadership Academy fellow and member of several committees. He believes that the key to winning friends is to be more interested than interesting. You'll learn a little bit about that tonight. Echoing his father's wise words, remember, son, God gave you 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Michael and Joel as they delve into the wisdom of how to win friends and influence people. Take it away, Michael.
All right. Thank you very much. That was probably the best introduction I've ever had in my life. So I do appreciate it a lot. So I'll go ahead and start with our agenda here. So today, what I'm going to be talking about is Dale Carnegie and his book. I'd like to delve into essentially why we kind of want to listen to Dale Carnegie, what was his expertise, and kind of go into the book itself, some facts about it. And then I'll be talking about fundamental techniques in handling people. So this is going to cover what should the day-to-day interactions look like with other people, especially as a leader. I think this extends beyond just fraternity, but also into your careers. I think it's very helpful advice. I wish I had it when I first started my career. And then I'll be talking about ways to make people like you. Now, I don't necessarily like this title. I think a better title would be how to maximize the relationships with people around you. And then from there, Joel is going to be talking about winning people to your way of thinking, being a leader, and why is this important. So first, Dale Carnegie, born in 1888, died in 1955. Sorry, let me switch over to my notes. So Dale Carnegie, he was actually born in a small town that wasn't too far from where I grew up, which was Maryville, Missouri. During his high school years, he very much enjoyed the debate club, and he actually attended something that was known as Chautauqua speeches. So during this time, there was a huge movement in America for adult education. So you can imagine the Chautauqua was a circus, but for adult education. And so at these Chautauquas, they had speakers, teachers, musicians, showmen, preachers, and specialists of the day. And Dale Carnegie, he especially loved the different speakers that would come out and the orators. And so I'll kind of go into that a little bit. But after he graduated from college at State College, he actually had a very successful career in sales. He made his firm the best in the industry, and he was the national leader within its territory. And from there, he joined the Chautauqua, where he spoke across the country through a New York production company. But from there, he moved on. He moved back to New York, and he was teaching public speaking at the YMCA. He eventually became a very prominent figure after he realized that public speaking, which is essentially a call to action, if you really do think about it, is not just about public speaking, but it's about motivating others. And so once he focused his research and his critiques and his speeches to this body of knowledge, which was kind of new at the point, he started earning about 500 a week, which is today is 15,200 each week just for his teachings, which is almost 800,000 a year in today's money to teach about public speaking and interpersonal relationships. Now, what I found very fascinating about Dale Carnegie was that he also drew upon psychology, philosophy, and the biographies of great leaders such as Abraham Lincoln. I'll go into that story a little bit, but he also delved on Andrew Carnegie, no relation, and also Charles Schwab. So he had experience in critiquing over 150,000 speeches estimated in his lifetime throughout the entire adult education movement. Now, his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, by the time of his death in 1955, there were over 5 million copies sold in over 31 languages. Today, it has sold over 30 million copies and is actually one of the best-selling books of all time, currently ranked 52nd, behind the Potter series, Harry Potter series, I did find out. Initially, this book was actually part of a lecture series that he did, but now it has been put together, it's been combined into a framework, and has been designed for us to kind of learn in layman's terms, essentially, how to win friends and influence people. So the book aims to teach everyone two things, as how I kind of think about it. Number one, a person cannot unlock their true potential until you improve your interpersonal skills. And number two is that through your own actions, you can actually influence others positively. So how does he teach it? First, we'll go into the fundamental techniques in handling people. Like I said, this is kind of your day-to-day interactions as leaders, as people, as managers in whatever career. So first is giving honest and sincere appreciation. So people crave appreciation more than anything else. And so what Carnegie did in his book is he truly emphasized that showing genuine gratitude and acknowledging others' contribution can transform your relationships, right? But it's important in this case to especially understand the difference between sincere appreciation and flattery. Carnegie calls flattery insecure and manipulative, right? So one thing, you can ask Joel this question too when we have our meetings. I truly hate salespeople, especially bad salespeople, because flattery is what they necessarily do. It's to try to get you to buy their product rather than just showing you what the product is. And so that, to me, that's a big negative because it's insecure and manipulative and usually shows there is a bad product. So if you do go into sales, try to keep that in mind. But flattery is kind of hard to recognize. So I think it's also more important to talk about what appreciation is. True appreciation comes from recognizing specific qualities, efforts, or achievements in others. It's about focusing on what someone has done well and communicating that in a heartfelt way. The reason this is important is that we as people want to feel important, right? If you put in a lot of work into your fraternity, you're going to want the chapter to recognize it. You don't want them to just kind of blow it over. You want to know that you feel important within this organization. And likewise, that's what your members are going to want to feel as well. And this extends obviously beyond fraternity. If you become a leader or a manager, make sure that whoever is on your team, whether you're a team member or a project manager or a director or whatever, make sure that your team feels that they are important, and you can do that through sincere appreciation. And so a good practical tip is don't just blow it over like, oh, you did a good job, right? Like I've had a lot of directors kind of do that. Instead, say your ability to organize this project and keep everyone on track was outstanding, right? So if someone puts a lot of planning into a social, they put in a lot of work to help boost recruitment, make sure you identify specifically what they did so they can understand that you are paying attention and you do appreciate the effort. And now this isn't from this book, but it's actually from another book. It's called Turn the Ship Around, which is about a submarine captain. One thing that a lot of leaders will actually reference from this book is that it's not important to just give sincere appreciation for your members when they do a good job, but to also do it immediately. Don't wait a week, don't wait 2 weeks. One thing that'd be really, really great, I don't know if you guys still do this, I know my chapter used to do this, is we used to have a brother of the week. So each week we would recognize someone who put in a lot of work, who made the fraternity better that week. I would seriously suggest it. We used to have a helmet that we give out. That brother would keep the helmet. They could sign their name, and we have a new helmet by the next academic year. Next technique in handling people is don't criticize, complain, or condemn. I think this is a very, very important point personally, because I was actually very bad at this as an undergraduate. I will completely admit this. Not necessarily for the complaining part, but definitely the criticizing and condemning, which I'll go into in a little bit. But criticism often causes resentment and rarely leads to positive change. Instead, understanding and empathy should guide interactions. And if you'll see throughout your leadership career is once you start criticizing people, you're going to create dysfunction with your team. I've had good bosses, I've had bad bosses. When a bad boss starts criticizing, the first thing is, I'm not going to work for this guy anymore, or I don't want to work for this guy anymore. I've had actually my coworkers put into our office and say they won't work with specific directors because they criticize. They come to your office and condemn you, and that just creates dysfunction within your team. And what's Carnegie kind of explains it as through his psychology research is that criticism wounds a person's pride and it makes them defensive. This often results in strained relationships rather than improvement. That's the dysfunction I'm talking about. It's because we as people, we're naturally emotionally attached to our ideas and actions, right? So during the chapter meetings, if someone proposes an idea, even if it might not be the best idea, don't just immediately criticize it. Or if you see someone else criticize it, try to step in, especially as a leader, and instead work through it with them. Say, well, I thank you, I do appreciate the offer, but provide a constructive suggestion instead. And so Carnegie goes through and says the psychological principle that people justify their actions, and also they rarely see themselves as wrong, no matter the circumstances. I'm sure in your chapters that there has to be some kind of disciplinary protocol. If you've been through that disciplinary protocol, you'll notice that people will still justify their actions. They'll never know that they truly did something wrong, right? That's just human nature as we become defensive in that case. And I think a great example of this is someone who did practice not criticizing or complaining was Abraham Lincoln. This is an extensive example provided in the book. So Abraham Lincoln, actually during the war, he gave orders to one of his generals to pursue General Robert E. Lee. And that actually could have ended the American Civil War early by several years. However, the general didn't follow his orders for a variety of reasons. And instead, Abraham Lincoln, instead of firing him or getting rid of the general or finding someone else, he actually wrote a letter. It's a pretty famous letter where he pretty much rebukes this general, but he never sends it. Because if you realize, if he would have sent it, think about what would have happened during that war, right? The general would have dysfunction within the team, that the entire operation might not go smoothly within the future, or there could have been many different reasons why this general didn't pursue Robert E. Lee's army to end the war early. And so that's kind of what I want to touch about myself is I was really bad about criticizing and condemning. And I kind of look back at that and realize, and this is what I want you guys to understand, is that when something went wrong within the chapter, I wasn't afraid to choose someone out, but I realized that I wasn't chewing people out because they deserved it, right? Even though that, they made a mistake or they did something wrong, I wasn't doing it because they deserved it. I did it because that was my release. I was taking out my frustrations on them and justifying it because of their bad actions. And I've actually seen even the president of my old company, right, one of the most influential people in oil and gas, he did that too. And I do have regrets because I realize now that that wasn't the best way to handle the situations. So try to learn from me. Some practical tips, and something that Abraham Lincoln did that I didn't have was have some kind of outlet, right? Pause before criticizing someone and consider their perspective. Also, it's really important to use positive reinforcement instead to guide behavior instead of focusing on mistakes. And also reframe complaints into constructive suggestions, like I was saying, collaborative problem solving. Don't make it a me problem. Don't make it a you problem. This is an us problem, especially within your chapters, right? We are a team and we all have the same goals here. The final technique is arouse in others an eager want. So to influence others, we have to align our goals. And I see this pretty much everywhere where dysfunction can happen because the entire team's goals are not aligned. One thing that wasn't mentioned is I am actually part of a startup here, and we're having some issues because we have different ideas. But it's important to understand what the people of your team want, what they want to get out of it, and you have to frame your ideas in a way that resonates with their interests. So what this means is people are obviously motivated by their own needs and desires. Instead of focusing on what you want, focus on what they want, right? Show how your ideas or actions can help them achieve their goals. If your secretary has to fill out, whatever the documentation was, I can't remember what it was specifically, but I know International HQ, so as documentation you guys need to fill out, show them that this is actually a great line in your resume, right? This shows that you're responsible. This shows you're actually used to corporate work, which is, essentially what it is. Or you can, if you have a recruitment chair, show them different ideas of how we can all achieve those goals. Don't necessarily put it on them in this case, and how if you were able to recruit like a massive pledge class like we were able to when I was an undergraduate, right? That's a huge line in your resume. Actually, one of my friends, he got a sales job because of that. So you can kind of go into that. But why this works is that Carnegie notes that one of the most effective ways to motivate people is to appeal to their self-interest. By presenting your ideas in terms of their benefits, you foster cooperation and enthusiasm. So some practical tips. When asking for something, frame it in terms of how it benefits the other person. Take time to understand your members' needs, desires, and motivations. And especially use phrases like, here's how this will help you to communicate your ideas effectively. So move on then to, like I said, I don't necessarily like this title, ways to get people to like you. Instead, I prefer to refer it as how to maximize your relationships with other people. Number one, become generally interested in other people. I think this is especially important for recruitment, right? People are naturally drawn to those who show sincere interest in them. And one of the biggest questions, I remember this happened during my first conclave in Louisville when I was learning about recruitment. Ask why, right? We have the same questions. Where are you from? What's your major? Blah, 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 right? Whenever someone says their major, ask them why, because that question gives you huge insight into who they are as a person and what they're specifically interested in. And so once you learn why they essentially do it, you have to relate in some way, right? Whether it's someone else in your fraternity, like, oh, I like video games, you're like, oh, blah, 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 just video games, right? Or if someone really wants to help people, that's actually how I was able to include someone in our lab recently. I just met him 2 weeks ago. He said he wanted to help people, and I framed it in a way I said, oh, well, that's interesting because my research project actually helps people with essential tremor, which is a neurological disease, right? And why this works is Carnegie emphasizes that people are often more concerned with their own lives than anything else. By showing interest, you can demonstrate that you value and care about them. And it has to be sincere, right? Especially for PNMs or recruitment or whoever's on your team. You have to actually be genuinely interested in them, okay? What's also important is be more interested than interesting. Now, I don't know if everyone's gone through this, but maybe you've had that friend that every time you tell a story, they try to one-up you, right? That's being more interested than interesting. Or that's the opposite. I mean, instead of trying to showcase your own achievements or stories, focus on learning about the other person. How I view it is when you're talking to someone, guide the conversation, right? Guide their conversation. You're providing anecdotes or relating or trying to learn more about them. Third point, which I know is kind of cheesy, pun intended, is smile. So after I actually read this book, I didn't really get along with this section. But then I actually tried it within my own personal relationships with my coworkers, etc. It truly does make a world of difference. I'm not going to lie. It just provides friendliness and warmth. People are more willing to relate with you. I make sure to smile every time I see one of my human clinical research patients. They're a lot more willing to talk to me, especially if they have a psychiatric comorbidity or any other kind of mental issues. It just truly makes a more positive environment and it maximizes your relationship with them. Fourth point, remember a person's name, right? I shouldn't have to say it, but I think we've all been in that awkward situation where we meet someone and we immediately forget their name, right? When you go into a job interview, or if you're meeting someone new on the team and you want to make sure you remember it, repeat the name, right? If you meet someone, say, oh, my name's so-and-so, say their name back immediately, number one, and then repeat that name later on. So if you ask someone, what's your name, or what school did you go to, blah, 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 then you ask them why, they tell you why, then you say, oh, that's interesting, John, actually, and then you can go on off of the conversation, okay? Number one, that's gonna help you remember it, and number two, it shows that you're listening. And speaking of listening, you want to be a good listener. Listening attentively is more impactful than speaking. Like I said previously, it's their conversation. You're just guiding it. Allow others to express themselves without interrupting or redirecting the conversation. Also, keep showing genuine interest. People feel validated when they're truly heard, and active listening builds trust and strengthens your relationships. So make sure you know about your teams. What are they doing? What's going on in their lives? How are they getting along with things? Are they struggling with certain tasks? This is great, not only for you as executive officers, but as managers and leaders later in life. Next, talk in terms of the other people's interests. I know I'm harping on it, but you're guiding their conversations. If they're talking about something they're very, very genuinely interested in, ask them follow-up questions. Show that you really want to learn about this subject. By focusing on what excites them, you create a sense of mutual enjoyment and relevance. And finally, if you do everything else, you're going to make the other person feel important. Like I said earlier, it's a fundamental want to feel important and to be acknowledged. If we acknowledge someone's value, it's one of the most powerful ways to foster goodwill. Carnegie believed the desire to feel important is one of the most fundamental human needs. And when people feel valued, they're more likely to respond positively and engage meaningfully. If you start making people not feel valued or not feel important, then all that extra work they were putting in when they did feel important is going to go out the window. It creates dysfunction. People aren't going to give you the information you need on time. They're not necessarily going to get their tasks done on time. It's very, very important. And with that, I'll give it over to Joel.
Well, good evening, brothers. I think that was a lot of great information that we got from Bender, and I hope that you all take full advantage of it and let it all soak in. I did want to compliment Blake on his Spanish. He did pretty good in pronouncing ornitorrinco. It is Spanish for duck-billed platypus. Uh, why we named our company Ornitorrinco really highlights, I think, the topic of what we're discussing tonight in how to win friends. When I think of the brand of Acacia, I think of bringing together different men of disparate ideas into a collaborative whole that shouldn't work. but it does magically. So the first thing that I want to talk about in winning people to your way of thinking is to begin in a friendly way. So this means that you're going to begin in a way that does not begin with criticism. So I think we've all seen, for those of us that are a little bit older that are still on Facebook, I know it's not the main social media platform anymore, but you see a lot of polarization on Facebook, and people really aren't winning the other side to their way of thinking because they're not beginning in a friendly way at all. They're beginning in a combative, critical way. So if you want to win somebody to your way of thinking, begin in a friendly way. I'll give you a practical example that was how I applied that today, actually, at work. So I work as an account manager in the transportation industry. So basically, we're bringing things from ships onto the land, and from the land, getting them on trucks to bring them wherever in the country. And there was a really hot load. That means that it needed to be delivered today. This driver was late to the pickup yesterday. He's not tracking on GPS today. He's not answering his phones, and this thing's got to get delivered today. So rather than call his dispatcher and just begin critical and yelling when I need results from them, I just started out and said, hey, I haven't been able to get a hold of your driver all day, and he's not tracking. I just want to make sure that he's okay, because this is out of the ordinary for you guys. So I want to make sure that he is okay, that his physical well-being is fine, that he's not on the side of the road, heaven forbid. This is very odd for you guys to not deliver on time for me. So something crazy must be happening, right? So I began in a friendly way. I began with concern and not with criticism. And then that segued to the dispatcher saying, hey, Joel, let me figure out what's going on right away. I'm on top of this. On top of my load, that was the other dozens of loads that he's responsible for that day. Mine now became the most important thing to him because I began in a friendly way and I began without criticism. So the second thing that you want to do is get the person saying yes, yes, yes immediately. So this is kind of like if you're pitching an idea, there's this concept called entrepreneurship, that the more that you're involved in a company, this is going to be something that Bender experiences quite a bit. It's basically entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship within a company that you don't own. So you're sharing ideas, you're getting creative and trying to find low-cost solutions, especially in a startup, right? But you can do this in a bigger environment. This is what I do on my special forces team, part of the company I work for, is thinking entrepreneurially all the time. So if you're trying to get somebody that is several rungs up in leadership on board, you want to pitch your ideas and get them saying yes, yes, yes. So you're asking questions that they know they're going to say yes to, so you gain agreement with them. Another way that you want to get yes, yes, yes is if you're wanting to correct behavior, right? So I'll give you more of a fraternity example on this. I think we've all probably experienced that brother that is a little bit more slovenly than we'd like, tends to leave their personal belongings in common rooms, leaves their stuff and possibly including underwear in the in the common bathroom, leaves their dishes in the sink. So I think one way to kind of, I think, really demonstrate the yes, yes is asking some questions, right? So you can begin with this fraternity brother and say, hey, do you like it when girls or other guests come over to the house? Yes, right? Do you want them to feel comfortable while in our house? Yes. Do you think girls and other guests want to use a clean bathroom? Well, Yes. So do you think everyone should keep their personal belongings, possibly including their dirty underwear, out of the common bathroom? Well, yes. So, and this way you've started to get yes immediately, and you can kind of, rather than the walls going up, they can begin to understand your way of thinking rather than just shutting you down automatically. Now let's go on to the third one. So in the third principle that we have here, let other people do a great deal of the talking. So you'll see in the first one, you're asking a lot of, and the number two, you're asking a lot of questions, right? So in three, in asking questions, the other person is doing more of the talking, and the truth is revealing itself to them without you having to do what Bender hates, which is selling. So you're not selling here, you're simply just allowing the truth to reveal itself to the person. It kind of reminds me of what my dad used to say, and Blake hinted at this, is just to remember that you have 2 ears and one mouth. He used to say God gave you two ears and one mouth, right? And the other is that people like to talk about themselves. So give them the opportunity to do it. And in that way, you build rapport. And in that way, you win people to your way of thinking. Let's go on to the fourth principle. So in this fourth principle, we're trying to see things honestly from another person's point of view. This is again where you're going to ask questions. You'll probably see a theme here that we're asking honest and sincere questions, not with criticism, but just with openness, with open-mindedness, and the objective to see the other person's point of view. So a couple of different real world applications where you can do this, as well as in the fraternity, is using this thing that's called mirroring. So mirroring is a way to rephrase something. So in that fraternity example that I gave with the brother that tends to be a little bit of a slob, we'd say something like, so what you're saying is sometimes you forget your things in the bathroom and you leave them there. Am I understanding that correctly? And so he's saying sometimes I just forget, and then so you're rephrasing that back to him. So that lets them know that you're understanding what they're saying, and they can reveal the truth to themselves sometimes to realize how silly it is, a thing that they're doing, like leaving your dirty underwear in a common bath. So the fifth is, as my voice cracks a little bit as a 41-year-old man, the fifth is to dramatize your ideas. Now, this is to tell a story. So kind of like I did before in the very beginning, where I shared with you a personal, example of my work day today, of just how it went, where I could have just been furious at this driver for being late to the pickup. Now they're going to be late to the delivery. They're not going to make it on time. It's got to be delivered today. They're not tracking, which is a contractual obligation. They're not answering my calls, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. So every way that this thing could go wrong, other than the freight, the cargo catching on fire, it was going wrong. So winning somebody to your way of thinking, you can dramatize your ideas simply by telling a story. Now, the sixth is appealing to the nobler motives. Now, this is where appealing to the nobler motives, you can set the example, right? So this is where you were talking about, let's say with the fraternity brother, say, what is it that we want to portray to other people? When people think about Acacia, what do you want them to think about us? Do you want them to think that we are conscientious, that we are honest, sincere, and genuine leaders that provide a safe environment for girls to hang out at our house, for our moms and get other guests to feel welcome and appreciated? And do you think dirty underwear in the common bathroom portrays all of that? Right? So that's where you're appealing to the nobler motives. You're asking them to be part of something that's greater than themselves, asking them to remember the best parts of themselves and not the worst. So that is winning people to your way of thinking. Hopefully you all have gotten something great out of that. Now the next part that we're going to talk about is coming up here. It's about being a leader. Now, in terms of being a leader, you want to begin with praise and honest appreciation. So this is again about that criticism part, where we don't want to begin with criticism. Instead, we want to begin with praise. The second is that we're going to use encouragement, right? So we're going to very much, just like I talked about in my world example, where I was saying, hey, I am genuinely concerned about what's going on with you guys because you're great. So I know that it must be something else that's going on. I really appreciate all of the great things that you do for me all the time. You guys are running multiple loads for me every day, and they're always on time. So something else must be going on. So I'm giving them encouragement. And the key part about that, which Michael talked about earlier, was it not being flattery, right? It's genuine. These are real things that have happened. They know how good they are for me usually. So I'm using encouragement to figure out, okay, this time where it's gone sideways and about everything that's gone wrong, could have gone wrong, what's happening? And I need to, rather than hang up the phone on me and give me the big, middle finger, I need the answers from them. So I need to keep them on the phone and I need to keep them encouraged. The third one, this is really, I think, out of all of us that are presenting today, this is probably our favorite. At least I think Blake, myself, I think Bender really likes this one too. I think Ben does as well, is give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. This is fraternity. And in the real world, if you will, in the workplace, this is going to be where you really stand out as a leader. You are going above expectations and you are being the role model. Now, part of that too is winning people to your way of thinking and being a leader is you want to be the change that people want to see, right? Be the change that you want to see, rather. So it's very difficult to persuade someone to do something if you're unwilling to do it yourself. Furthermore, you've provided a track record of how you can do such a thing, right? And can give best practices to that person and saying, I do this every day. This is my habit, et cetera. I'm not late to work and this is my best practice, and how I'm not walking in 5-10 minutes late every day, matriculating in, then getting my coffee, then going to the bathroom. And pretty much after that, you're 45 minutes into the workday, technically stealing company time, and you've accomplished nothing. So there's those best practices. So if you want to give the other person a fine reputation to live up to, you need to do it first. The fourth is asking questions instead of giving orders. So you'll see this constantly. It is a best practice of Carnegie, is remembering that you have that one mouth and those two ears. So you're doing at least a 2-to-1 where you're asking 2 questions for every kind of statement that you're making. You want to make sure that you, in order to be persuasive, are getting them talking and you're doing more of the listening. So you're going to be asking questions to those that you're trying to lead, right? And this lets you in on their intentions, their heart, their mind, and what and how you can lead them. One thing that we do really well in Ornithorinco is really this belief in leadership personalities. So understanding the dynamics of the group, that your group of disparate weirdos that have come together in one very beautiful place called fraternity, understanding all the different personalities that are there. And you can only really understand that by asking questions. So you ask a hell of a lot more questions than you do give orders. The fifth one about being a leader, this is a really fun one that I love. It's throwing down a challenge. So throwing down a challenge would be, let's say the individual that's, routinely late to work, but does exceptional work and stays late. But it is saying, hey, let's throw down a challenge. Every day this week, let's be at work at your desk 15 minutes before our scheduled time. For the fraternity brother that routinely leaves their underwear and shampoo and everything in the common bathroom, say, hey, just for this week, let's me and you together. Let's make sure that we clean the bathroom together and that we double check and pause to make sure before we leave the bathroom after we've taken a shower that we bring all of our items with us. Now, here's this next slide is super fun. So why are all these things important? Right? So one is men join fraternities because of the brothers in the chapter. So this is really men that are living up to that, to being that fine reputation for others to live up to, right? Is being that example on campus. When people see X, Y, and Z, they automatically associate that with a member of Acacia. They automatically associate that with you. But more than that, perhaps it's connecting brothers with similar interests. So it's a very difficult to connect brothers with similar interests if you don't know anything about them. And I'm not going to call out a particular fraternity on Mizzou's campus, but it was kind of interesting to me. And this isn't demonizing being a large chapter. I would love all of our chapters to be 120 men chapters, but also know each other. Is that they had men in their fraternity that didn't know each other. I knew both of them, but they didn't know each other. It was very interesting. Now, the second thing is you're going to listen to understand or using these techniques of listening, you can identify positive and negative personality and character traits early. So you're going to listen to understand who someone is, what they value, and who they are as a person. And this is all about fraternity culture, and this is all about building rapport and building relationships in the workplace, is understanding someone's personality and how you can work collaboratively. And the third is really an awesome point of why we're doing this. Is more and more we've noticed that people are lacking those soft skills, in a post-COVID world, as people like to say. And Fortune 500 companies, startups, any company that you're working for are really looking to make sure that who they're hiring out of college has these soft skills. And a lot of companies are actually paying their new staff, their new employees, to acquire these soft skills after they've been hired. It's part of your core competency, your onboarding of your new job. Now, here's what we're trying to do with these Acacia talks, right? Is to give you all those soft skills particularly in how to win friends. That's very on brand for Acacia. And you are going to be light years ahead of your peers that are in other organizations or aren't in fraternity life at all, simply by developing these soft skills that we're talking about in the Acacia talks. So lastly, in our last slide, we want you to have some key takeaways here, right? So the first one is practice makes better, not perfect. So you're just going to be, through doing all these things, you're just going to be making sure, that it becomes part of who you are. Eventually it becomes like breathing, but at first it's going to be like working out, where maybe for some of you it's something that you look forward to, and others maybe not as much. But the end result is going to be that you know how to win friends and you know how to create collaborative environments. So the second thing of your key takeaways there is that exceed your expectations by being a role model, right? So you rise to that level that's more than what you thought you could do by being abstract examples that I like to do about. There is the Clydesdale horse, right? So the Clydesdale horse has a certain, as you'd imagine, horsepower. It's the strongest horse that there is. And you pair a second Clydesdale to another Clydesdale, you would think that they're pulling power. So it's more powerful with each other rather than. And our third takeaway is honest, sincere, and nobler motives, and being genuine, and not just with words, but with your actions. So this is basically, when it sums it all up, is that is making sure that you are basically rising to that occasion and being the best, not just with your words, but with your actions. Hopefully you got a lot out of this presentation, and we really appreciate you, gents. So live.